Imagine this. The marble halls of Congress, usually echoing with calculated whispers and partisan deals, suddenly erupt into chaos. Cameras flash like lightning as a bombshell drops, a federal court ruling slams down like thunder, exposing alleged abuses of power so brazen they demand immediate congressional action. And there on every screen across America, President Donald Trump appears, his face flushed crimson, veins bulging, unleashing a torrent of rage on live television. Witch hunt, traitors, illegal coup. He bellows, pounding the podium as if trying to shatter the very Constitution itself. In that moment, the nation freezes. This isn't just another tweet storm. This is a president freaking out, unraveling in real time as judges across the country blast his administration for what they call a sweeping scheme to corrupt the courts, intimidate critics, and bend justice to his will. But this fury didn't come out of nowhere. It exploded in late 2025, months into Trump's second term, when House Democrats, led by courageous voices like immigrant-born Representative Shri Thanedar and veteran fighter Al Green, introduced explosive new impeachment resolutions. These weren't vague accusations, they were meticulous, damning charges laid out in black and white. House Resolution 353, filed in the spring, unleashed 7 articles of impeachment, accusing the president of everything from obstruction of justice and usurping Congress's spending power to abusing trade authority, violating First Amendment rights, creating unlawful offices, bribery, corruption, and the most chilling of all, tyranny. And then came the flashpoint that pushed it over the edge. In June 2025, amid escalating tensions with Iran, Trump authorized direct U.S. military strikes on 3 key Iranian nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, without a single word of approval from Congress. No imminent threat, no declaration of war. Just unilateral bombs raining down, obliterating facilities in a blaze that Trump boasted totally destroyed Iran's capabilities. Representative Al Green responded with House Resolution 537, a separate impeachment measure zeroing in on this act as an illegal war, a direct violation of the Constitution's War Powers Clause, warning that it dragged America toward authoritarianism under a leader who acts like a king. Trump's reaction? Pure meltdown. He framed the Supreme Court's 2024 immunity ruling, which granted presidents absolute protection for core official acts like commanding the military, as his personal shield, celebrating it as total exoneration while raging against impeachment pushes as treasonous plots on. His allies echoed the cry, calling advocates enemies of the people, but critics, from federal judges to constitutional scholars, fired back. The courts had narrowed their role, collapsing the last criminal cases against him after his re-election, shoving the burden of accountability straight back to Congress. This is the collision we've all been watching unfold, a president shielded from prosecutors, but facing a reckoning in the people's house. For immigrant families like mine, who came here chasing the American dream of fairness and opportunity, this hits deep. We've seen leaders abuse power in other countries, turning democracy into dictatorship. We fled that. We built lives here believing no one is above the law, not even the most powerful man in the world. And as Trump's freakout went viral, millions watched in disbelief. Hashtags exploded. Families gathered around dinners debating if this was the end of checks and balances. Young activists, children of immigrants proud of their heritage, shared stories of why this fight matters. Because America's strength isn't in one man's rage, but in our shared commitment to justice, dignity, and the rule of law that welcomes everyone. But beneath the screams and celebrations, a darker truth emerged. The Supreme Court had drawn controversial lines around immunity, protecting official acts while critics argued it ducked real accountability. Criminal cases crumbled. The Georgia election case dismissed. No prosecutions left. Practical consequences now rested with Congress and voters. Trump danced victory, but impeachment warriors stood firm, insisting this was exactly what the founders designed for, removing a tyrant. The air crackled with tension. America held its breath. Would Congress act or let these allegations fade into partisan noise? One thing was clear, this wasn't just politics. This was a battle for the soul of our nation, where courage confronts corruption and the voices of the marginalized rise to demand better. But As the dust from Trump's outburst began to settle, something even more revealing surfaced: his backstory of arrogance and unchecked ambition that set the stage for this downfall. Picture the weight of history pressing down on our nation as 2025 unfolds. A second Trump term, marked not by unity, but by escalating crises that test the very foundations of American democracy. This isn't mere political theater. It's a profound struggle for the soul of a country built on ideals of justice, equality, and opportunity for all, especially for those of us whose families crossed borders chasing the promise of a better life. The fresh impeachment resolutions crashing into Congress aren't partisan games. They're urgent warnings from guardians of the Constitution, sounding the alarm against a presidency veering into dangerous territory. At the heart of this storm stands House Resolution 353, introduced in April by Representative Shri Thanedar, an immigrant from India who rose from humble beginnings to champion the voiceless in Michigan. His resolution unleashes 7 powerful articles of impeachment, each one a meticulously documented charge against abuses that strike at democracy's core. Obstruction of justice through weaponizing the DOJ, usurping Congress's sacred power of the purse, reckless trade wars and international aggression, trampling First Amendment freedoms by silencing critics, inventing unlawful offices to expand executive reach, bribery, and corruption for personal gain, and the gravest of all, tyranny, accusing the president of seeking unchecked autocratic rule that echoes the kings our founders rejected. Then, in June, as tensions boiled over with Iran, President Trump unleashed Operation Midnight Hammer, unilateral U.S. strikes on 3 vital Iranian nuclear sites: Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. 2 bombers dropped massive penetrators in the dead of night without congressional authorization. No imminent threat declared, just executive decree raining destruction. Trump boasted of obliterating Iran's capabilities, but intelligence whispers told a different story. Setbacks, yes, but not elimination, with enriched uranium reportedly evacuated beforehand. Representative Al Green, a tireless fighter from Texas with roots in the civil rights struggle, fired back with House Resolution 537, branding this an illegal war, a blatant violation of the War Powers Clause that reserves declaring war for Congress alone. He warned that such solo acts erode democracy, sliding us toward authoritarianism where one man decides fate with bombs. These moves didn't happen in isolation. They exploded against the Supreme Court's 2024 immunity ruling, which draped absolute protection over core official acts, like commanding the military and presumptive shields for others. Post-re-election, Trump's remaining criminal cases crumbled. The Georgia election interference probe dismissed, federal charges retooled or paused. No prosecutions left for a sitting president. Critics cried foul. The courts had sidestepped accountability, kicking the can to Congress and voters. Trump, he celebrated wildly, declaring total exoneration, while lashing out at impeachment efforts as treasonous coups, branding lawmakers traitors. For progressive hearts, immigrant families, and proud communities of color, this hits like a gut punch. We've seen power abused abroad, fled oppression for America's light of fairness and inclusion. Now allegations of corrupting justice to punish enemies and protect allies, starting wars without check, suppressing voices. It's a betrayal of what makes us American. Young activists, daughters and sons of immigrants waving flags of heritage and hope, flood social media with stories. This fight is ours too, because democracy thrives when everyone belongs. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Congress turns away, if these resolutions gather dust under Republican control, we risk normalizing overreach, eroding the checks that keep power in balance. Accountability hangs by a thread: impeachment, as the founders' remedy for exactly this, a leader accused of tyranny. Zoom in on the man at the center of this storm, Donald Trump, a figure whose journey from billionaire showman to twice-elected president has always thrived on defiance, spectacle, and an unyielding belief in his own invincibility. His comeback in 2024 wasn't just a political victory. It was a thunderous roar of triumph over every institution that tried to hold him accountable. Crowds chanted his name as he swept back into the White House in January 2025, promising to drain the swamp deeper, settle scores, and wield power like no leader before him. To his devoted base, he was the ultimate fighter, the outsider who exposed the elites. But to millions more, immigrant families building quiet lives of hard work, communities of color demanding fairness, young progressives carrying the torch of inclusion, he embodied something darker. Arrogance wrapped in grievance, a relentless drive to bend reality to his will. Flash back to that euphoric post-election glow. Trump didn't just win, he crushed expectations, framing his return as divine vindication after years of investigations, impeachments, and courtroom battles. The Supreme Court's 2024 immunity ruling became his golden shield, a landmark decision granting absolute protection for core official acts, like commanding the armed forces or directing the executive branch, and presumptive immunity for everything else on the outer perimeter. Criminal cases that once loomed large began crumbling almost immediately. The Georgia election interference probe? Dismissed. Federal charges restructured or paused. No active prosecutions remained against a sitting president. Trump erupted in victory laps, posting all-caps missives declaring total exoneration and mocking his detractors as losers in a rigged game he had finally mastered. Emboldened, he moved swiftly in his second term, projecting strength through bold unilateral strokes. Tariffs slammed on allies and adversaries alike, justified as protecting American workers but escalating global tensions. Executive orders flew, reshaping agencies and priorities overnight. And then came the defining escalation, the Iran crisis. As Israel and Iran traded blows in June 2025, Trump saw opportunity. Without consulting Congress, without declaring an imminent threat, he greenlit Operation Midnight Hammer, precision strikes on 3 critical Iranian nuclear sites: the fortified underground facility at Fordow, the enrichment plant at Natanz, and the conversion site at Isfahan. Stealth bombers delivered massive ordnance in the night, and Trump announced it himself on Truth Social. Iran's nuclear program completely and totally obliterated. He basked in the praise from hardliners, positioning himself as the decisive leader who did what others wouldn't, preventing a nuclear Iran through sheer force of will. But contradictions piled up like storm clouds. He preached peace through strength while risking wider war. He decried foreign entanglements, yet plunged deeper into Middle East fire. Intelligence assessments whispered setbacks for Iran, not destruction, programs delayed perhaps, but resilient. Critics, including some in his own party, like isolationists Thomas Massie and Rand Paul, called it unconstitutional overreach. Yet Trump doubled down, raging against any question as disloyalty, branding opponents warmongers, or worse. This was the pattern. Power exercised with flair and fury, accountability dismissed as persecution. His rants labeled judges radical lunatics, lawmakers traitors, media enemies of the people. Supporters ate it up, seeing a strong man fighting the system. But for those of us whose families fled authoritarian regimes, where one man's word crushed dissent, where courts bent to whims, it evoked chilling echoes. Trump's world was zero-sum, win at all costs, loyalty above law. The immunity ruling fed that ego, convincing him no barrier remained. On the other side of this epic clash stand the true guardians of American democracy, quiet warriors whose lives embody the very values under siege: resilience, sacrifice, inclusion, and an unbreakable commitment to justice. These heroes aren't born in privilege or powered by ego. They're forged in struggle, often as immigrants or descendants of those who fled tyranny, arriving on these shores with nothing but hope and a fierce belief in the Constitution's promise of fairness for all. Take Representative Shri Thanedar, the driving force behind House Resolution 353. Born in poverty in India, Thanedar came to America as a young man with just $8 in his pocket, chasing the dream that hard work and opportunity could lift anyone. He built a successful life through grit, earning advanced degrees, starting businesses, creating jobs, but never forgot the barriers faced by the overlooked. Elected to represent Michigan's diverse 13th district, including vibrant Detroit communities rich with immigrant stories, Thanedar has championed working families, healthcare access, and economic equity. In April 2025, drawing from his own journey fleeing hardship, he introduced those 7 searing articles of impeachment, accusing the president of obstruction, usurpation of power, trade abuses, First Amendment violations, unlawful offices, corruption, and tyranny. For Thanedar, this wasn't politics. It was personal, a defense of the America that welcomed him against a leader whose actions echoed the autocrats he left behind. Then there's Representative Al Green, the relentless voice from Texas behind House Resolution 537. A son of the South, shaped by the civil rights era, Green has spent decades fighting for the marginalized Black communities, immigrants, the poor through public service rooted in moral clarity. His district in Houston pulses with diversity. Families from Latin America, Africa, Asia, all weaving the fabric of modern America. In June 2025, as bombs fell on Iran's nuclear sites without congressional say, so Green rose on the House floor, his voice steady amid chaos, introducing impeachment for an illegal war that violated the War Powers Clause and risked sliding us into authoritarianism. He'd warned before. A president who acts alone with force endangers the democracy that lifted generations like his. Tabled swiftly, his resolutions still ignited debate, reminding us that true strength lies in checks, not unchecked power. These lawmakers aren't lone rangers. They're part of a broader coalition. Federal judges quietly upholding rule of law despite threats, constitutional scholars sounding alarms, activists from immigrant roots marching for accountability. Many, like Thanedar, know firsthand the cost of unchecked leaders, families torn apart, voices silenced, dreams crushed. They've sacrificed comfort, faced backlash, even threats to stand firm. Young progressives, children of immigrants, proudly blending cultures, amplify their message online, sharing stories of parents who crossed deserts or oceans for freedom, now watching it tested. What makes these protagonists uniquely equipped? Their lived experiences mirror America's greatest strength. Diversity is power. They've navigated systems rigged against outsiders, emerging with empathy and resolve. Past impeachments taught them evidence matters, detailed charges backed by facts, not fury. The Supreme Court's immunity shield collapsed criminal paths, but these heroes see impeachment as the founder's gift. A political remedy for political abuses, especially when courts step back. In this moment, as allegations of DOJ corruption, unilateral wars, and tyrannical aspirations mount, their backstories inspire. For progressive audiences, immigrant families waving dual flags of heritage and hope, this is validation. Your struggles fuel the fight for a better nation. These guardians prove dignity triumphs over division, service over self-interest. And as tensions boiled over, impeachment articles piling up, Trump's rage escalating, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of power. The chamber hummed with electric tension as spring bled into summer 2025, the weight of 7 meticulously crafted articles of impeachment hanging heavy in the air like storm clouds ready to burst. House Resolution 353, championed by the steadfast Shri Thanedar, had laid bare a comprehensive case against President Trump: obstruction of justice through a corrupted DOJ, usurpation of Congress's spending power, reckless abuse of trade authority fueling international aggression. Some chilling violations of First Amendment rights to silence dissent, the creation of shadowy, unlawful offices beyond oversight, bribery, and corruption tainting public trust, and the most thunderous charge of all: tyranny. Accusing him of wielding power like an autocrat unbound by the Constitution, our immigrant forebears cherish. But the fuse was truly lit in June when Trump authorized Operation Midnight Hammer, the daring, unilateral U.S. strikes on Iran's fortified nuclear heartlands, the underground bastion at Fordow, the enrichment hub at Natanz, and the conversion complex at Isfahan. B-2 stealth bombers unleashed massive bunker busters in the dead of night. Submarines fired salvos of tomahawks, all without a whisper of congressional approval or declaration of imminent threat. Trump crowed victory on Truth Social, proclaiming the sites completely and totally obliterated, a spectacular success shielding allies and preventing nuclear peril. Yet to guardians of the Constitution, this was no triumph. It was tyranny in action. Representative Al Green, his voice resonant with the moral fire of civil rights legacy, stormed the House floor days later, introducing House Resolution 537. This separate, laser-focused impeachment article branded the strikes an illegal war. a brazen violation of the War Powers Clause that empowers Congress alone to declare hostilities. Green warned solemnly, such solo executive war-making devolves our cherished democracy into authoritarian shadows, where one man's whim risks lives and escalates global firestorms. Trump's response? A volcanic freakout that shook screens nationwide. Rallies erupted with venomous chants, posts screamed of treasonous coups and enemies within. He branded impeachment champions traitors, disloyal radicals plotting to undo the people's will. Allies piled on, dismissing charges as baseless witch hunts, while Trump invoked the Supreme Court's immunity shield, absolute for court acts like military command, as proof of his untouchable exoneration. His composure cracked visibly, face reddening in interviews, voice rising to shouts, hands slashing air as if battling invisible foes. In stark, inspiring contrast, the protagonists remained composed pillars of dignity. Thanedar and Green, voices steady and eyes unwavering, presented evidence with calm precision, documents detailing DOJ schemes to protect allies and punish critics, unilateral fund shifts defying appropriations, tariffs as weapons of aggression, suppressed voices of opposition. Judges nationwide echoed quietly in rulings, blasting executive over each while navigating immunity's new lines that had collapsed criminal cases post-re-election. Georgia dismissed, federal probes paused, no prosecutions piercing the presidential bubble. The arena turned gladiatorial, Trump's rage versus the hero's resolute poise. For immigrant communities, progressive families blending heritage with American pride, this escalation felt profoundly personal, a defense of the inclusive dream against division's roar. Young voices flooded feeds. We stand with truth tellers who protect our future. Hashtags surged, debates ignited dinner tables, as the nation watched one side unravel in fury while the other held firm, embodying the quiet strength that built this land of opportunity. Insults flew thicker, Trump's camp labeling advocates radical lunatics, yet the Guardians pressed on, unflinching. The room fell silent during key readings of charges. Collective breaths held as Tyranny's accusation landed like a gavel. And in that charged hush, the counterattack began, a calm, evidence-fueled revelation that would expose the cracks and rally a nation. In the hallowed halls of the House, where the echoes of history mingle with the pulse of the present, the guardians of democracy stepped forward, not with rage, but with resolute calm, armed not with insults, but with irrefutable truth. As the impeachment resolutions gained momentum in the turbulent months of 2025, Representatives Shri Thanedar and Al Green, alongside a coalition of steadfast lawmakers and judicial voices, unleashed a counterattack that cut through the chaos like a beacon of clarity. This was no frantic defense. It was a deliberate, evidence-driven revelation laying bare the allegations in House Resolution 353 and its Iran-focused companion, House Resolution 537, with the poise of those who know justice is on their side. The chamber grew hushed as Thanedar rose, his voice steady, drawing from his immigrant journey of perseverance to frame the 7 articles as a sacred duty to protect the America that had given him opportunity. One by one, he illuminated the charges. Obstruction of justice, where the Department of Justice was allegedly twisted to shield allies and hound critics. Usurpation of congressional spending power, bypassing the people's representatives on vital funds. Abuse of trade powers and international aggression, wielding tariffs and threats as personal weapons. Violations of First Amendment rights, intimidating voices that dared dissent. Creation of unlawful offices, expanding executive shadows beyond constitutional light. Bribery and corruption, blurring public service with private gain, and tyranny, the word that landed like a thunderclap, accusing a pattern of consolidating unchecked power, eroding liberties, and defying the founders' vision of balanced governance. Screens flickered with documents, timelines, and testimonies. Each revealed building suspense. The room held its breath as excerpts from the resolution flashed. Directives to subordinates, unilateral actions, threats against judges and lawmakers. Gasps rippled through observers as the Tyranny article was read aloud. Acts seeking to establish autocratic rule over a free people, echoing the very oppression many immigrant families had fled. Then Al Green took the floor, his civil rights-honed resolve shining through, zeroing in on the June strikes. Without pause, he detailed Operation Midnight Hammer, U.S. forces targeting Fordo, Narandiz, and Isfahan. Deeply buried nuclear sites obliterated in nighttime precision, Trump boasting of total destruction. But Green paused dramatically, letting the weight sink in. No congressional authorization, no imminent threat, just executive command launching what he called an illegal war. House Resolution 537's text projected large, violation of the War Powers Clause, devolving democracy into authoritarianism under a leader who acts without check. Crowd reactions swelled, lawmakers nodding gravely, galleries murmuring in solidarity, cameras capturing allies' discomfort. Social media ignited in real time. Young activists, proud children of immigrants, blending cultures with American ideals, posting clips with captions like, "This is why we fight for accountability that welcomes all." Hashtags surged, memes contrasted Trump's fury with the hero's composure, viral threads amplifying evidence to millions. Trump's confidence visibly crumbled in absentia, his posts growing erratic, rallies deflecting with bluster, allies scrambling to reframe strikes as protected core acts under the Supreme Court's immunity ruling. That 2024 decision, granting absolute immunity for military commands and presumptive for others, had collapsed remaining criminal cases post-re-election. Georgia dismissed, federal probes paused, no active prosecutions piercing the shield. So Trump danced victory, claiming exoneration. But here in Congress, the Guardians reframed it. Courts narrowing criminal paths, shoving accountability to the people's house, where impeachment stands as the ultimate remedy. Pauses punctuated the presentations, each reveal DOJ schemes, suppressed speech, unilateral bombs, eroding the villain's facade. Trump's denials faltered under documented facts. Threats labeling advocates traitors, freakouts dismissing resolutions as coups. Yet the protagonists remained unflinching, their calm, dismantling arrogance with dignity. The counterattack rallied a nation, proving no shield is absolute when courage confronts power. And as the evidence settled like dust in sunlight, shockwaves began rippling outward, social media erupting, the world reacting in waves that would reshape everything. As the echoes of the Guardian's powerful presentations faded in the congressional chamber, a tidal wave of reaction crashed across America and beyond, turning the impeachment resolutions into a nationwide reckoning that no one could ignore. Social media erupted like wildfire. Defend democracy and #impeach for accountability skyrocketed to the top trends, dominating feeds from coast to coast. Memes flooded timelines. Trump's furious rally clips juxtaposed with Thanedar's calm resolve and Green's unflinching gaze, captioned with phrases like rage versus reason and dignity wins. Young activists, proud sons and daughters of immigrants, weaving their rich heritages into the American tapestry, shared personal stories and viral threads. My parents fled tyranny for this freedom. We won't let it slip away now. Millions liked, retweeted, and commented, their voices amplifying the evidence. The 7 articles of H.Res, 353 detailing obstruction, usurpation, trade abuses, First Amendment suppression, unlawful offices, corruption, and tyranny. The stark warning in H.Res. 537 about the June Operation Midnight Hammer strikes on Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, unilateral bombs without congressional nod, branded as illegal war, pushing us toward authoritarian shadows. Praise poured in for the heroes. Jesse, late-night hosts roasted the villains' freakouts with clips of Trump's red-faced tirades, drawing roaring laughter and sharp commentary. When truth hits, rage follows, but composure conquers. Celebrities weighed in. Actors, musicians, athletes from diverse backgrounds posting solidarity, standing with Thanedar and Green, immigrants and fighters who remind us America's strength is in our shared values. Pundits across networks dissected the revelations, many nodding to the Supreme Court's immunity ruling that shielded core acts like military commands, collapsing criminal cases, and thrusting accountability to Congress. Even international leaders chimed in cautiously, allies expressing concern over unchecked power, while global media headlines screamed of America's constitutional crossroads. The ripple effect reshaped conversations everywhere. Families at dinner tables debated fiercely, progressive households, immigrant communities blending cultures with unwavering patriotism, finding validation in the stand. This is our America, too, one of fairness and opportunity. Polls shifted overnight, public support for probing the charges surging among independents and moderates. Gep holdouts squirmed as constituents flooded offices with calls demanding answers, while Shield allegations of DOJ corruption silenced critics and solo strikes risking wider conflict. Fractures appeared in the majority, whispers of unease growing louder. Trump's camp fired back desperately, posts blasting hoax and traitors, rallies doubling down on exoneration claims. But the evidence stuck. Documented unilateralism in the Iran operation, celebrated as obliterating nuclear threats yet decried as overreach. The broad accusations in Thunder's resolution painting consolidation of power. Viral fact checks debunk deflections, empowering everyday voices to share. We deserve leaders who uphold the law, not bend it. For immigrant families, communities of color, and progressive hearts beating with pride in our multifaceted nation, this was electric affirmation. Their struggles, their resilience mirrored in the protagonist's fight. Evolved into movements, petitions circulating, turnout pledges for future elections swelling. The shockwaves forced reckoning. Courts may have narrowed paths, but the people's house could still roar. And in this awakening, a profound moral clarity emerged, reframing the entire saga into a timeless truth about what makes America endure. In the aftermath of this thunderous clash, the evidence laid bare the resolutions standing as beacons against unchecked power. A profound truth emerges, one that echoes through America's history and into the hearts of every family who has ever sought refuge and opportunity on these shores. The Guardians, Shri Thanedar and Al Green, with their roots in struggle and service, have reframed Trump's rage and overreach not as invincible strength, but as the desperate flailing of a leader afraid of accountability. Their stand proves an eternal American ideal. Dignity always triumphs over arrogance, service over self-interest, and the rule of law over the whims of any one man. This moment, with H.Res. 353's 7 articles, from obstruction and corruption to the grave charge of tyranny, and H.Res. 537's warning against unilateral wars like the June strikes on Iran's nuclear sites reminds us why impeachment exists. The founders, wary of kings, crafted it as democracy's shield, especially when courts grant broad immunity and criminal paths close. Trump's freakouts labeling truth-tellers traitors only highlight the contrast. Composure born of conviction versus fury fueled by fear. For immigrant communities, progressive souls blending proud heritages with unwavering faith in America's promise, this is validation and inspiration. Your stories of fleeing oppression, building lives through hard work, raising children who wave flags of both past and future, are the nation's backbone. These heroes mirror you, resilient, inclusive, unyielding, in defense of fairness. No shield protects forever when courage rises. No rage silences the collective voice demanding better. As 2025 closes with resolutions lingering amid Republican blocs and shockwaves still rippling, we see renewal. Faith in democracy reignites, not in one person's power, but in our shared commitment to justice, equality, and opportunity for all. True American strength lies here, in upholding the Constitution that welcomes everyone, ensuring no tyrant dims the light of freedom. This saga teaches us when institutions waver, people persist, dignity prevails, unity endures. And in standing together, we build an America where every voice matters. Every dream is possible. But even as this chapter inspires, Trump's outburst was just the spark, one that exposed deeper vulnerabilities, pulling us toward a reckoning that ties directly back to the chaos we witnessed at the very beginning. We began with that explosive moment, President Trump freaking out on screens nationwide, raging against witch hunts and traitors as fresh impeachment resolutions crashed into Congress like waves against a crumbling wall. What unfolded was a cinematic battle for America's heart. Arrogance clashing with dignity, unchecked power tested by courageous guardians like Shri Thanedar, the immigrant success story who rose to defend the dream that welcomed him, and Al Green, the civil rights warrior standing unyielding for justice. Through 7 damning articles in H.Res. 353, From obstruction and corruption to tyranny and the bold strike-focused H.Res. 537 over unilateral attacks on Iran's nuclear sites in June's Operation Midnight Hammer. These heroes exposed the cracks in a presidency shielded by immunity, yet vulnerable to truth. Trump's outbursts only amplified their moral clarity. No one stands above the law, and true strength blooms from inclusion, resilience, and shared values. For immigrant families proudly blending heritages, progressive communities demanding fairness, this victory of composure over chaos reaffirms our power. Justice prevails when we rise together. If this story ignited your fire for accountability and dignity, subscribe now, share with your circle, and join the movement. Let's keep building an America where every voice echoes, every dream thrives. Together we win.